My name is Sylvia Quintanilla. I am 34 years old, and for the past 2 years, I have lived with the quiet knowledge that every ordinary day is something I once almost lost. The doctors called it remission. I called it a second life. On that afternoon, sunlight filtered through the tall maple trees lining my quiet neighborhood outside Boston. The light spilled gently through the living room windows, warming the hardwood floors and illuminating the small garden I'd painstakingly rebuilt after months of being too weak to even step outside. The flowers were nothing special: petunias, daisies, a stubborn rose bush, but to me, they were proof that things could return, slowly, imperfectly, but alive. I sat near the window with a mug of coffee cradled between both hands. The warmth seeped into my palms as I breathed in deeply. My hair, once thin and patchy from treatment, now brushed against my shoulders again. It wasn't as thick as it used to be, but it was mine, growing, staying. My phone rang, cutting through the stillness. Mija, my mother's voice came through, careful and practiced, as if she was always choosing her words around me now. How are you feeling? Are you ready for dinner tonight? I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. I'm fine, Mom, really. 6 o'clock, right? Dad said he'd bring wine. Yes, she replied, then hesitated for half a beat. Your sister will be there too, and Daniel. I also invited Daniel's parents. That's nice, I said honestly. They're good people. And they were. Daniel's parents had shown more quiet concern for my health than most people ever knew how to express. His father asked about my work without pity in his eyes. His mother never spoke about my illness, unless I did first. After the call ended, I stood and walked into my home office. The room was small but orderly, the kind of place that made me feel in control again. On my laptop screen was a neatly labeled folder, Wedding Gift, Ramirez Family. Inside were documents no one would ever associate with me at first glance: real estate listings, loan coordination emails, bank transfer drafts, quiet things, behind the scenes things. I had spent months preparing them, not because my sister asked, but because I wanted to give her a smoother beginning than I'd had. Family helps family. That was what I believed. As I closed the folder, the past crept in uninvited. White hospital walls, the steady beep of a heart monitor, my mother crying quietly in the corner while my father stared at the floor like he could will answers out of it, and my younger sister, Isabella, standing near the door. Get better soon, she'd said, shifting her purse on her shoulder. I have to go. I'm meeting Daniel. My mother had scolded her gently. Bella, this is a difficult time for your sister. Isabella had shrugged. I have my own life too. You can't make Sylvia's illness the center of everything. I remembered how I'd shaken my head then, even through the nausea and fear. She's young, I'd told myself. She deserves happiness. I repeated that lie to myself many times. Another memory followed, this one sharper. Dr. Alvarez sat across from me, his voice calm and precise. Sylvia, your latest results are good. You're officially in remission. I'd pressed my hands to my mouth as tears spilled over, relief, fear, gratitude, all tangled together. You still need time, he'd added gently. Recovery isn't just physical. Be mindful of what and who you give your energy to. Standing in my office now, I turned back toward the window and watched the leaves sway. I placed a hand against my chest, feeling my heartbeat, steady and strong. Then I reached for the wedding invitation resting on my desk. Ivory paper, elegant lettering. April 7th. I traced the date with my finger and smiled softly. I'll finally see my sister walk down the aisle, I thought. We made it. I opened my closet and pulled out a light blue dress. Simple, elegant, nothing that would draw attention. The last thing I wanted was to be the cancer sister at Isabella's wedding. I wanted to blend into the background and let her shine. My phone rang again. Hey, Sylvia, Daniel's voice said warmly. Looking forward to dinner tonight. By the way, that Brookline property you mentioned, I really like it. I haven't told Isabella yet. I smiled despite myself. I'm glad. It's perfect for you two. I'll handle the details. Quietly. Let's not bring up real estate tonight. I don't want to spoil the surprise. You're incredible, he said sincerely. Thank you for everything. After we hung up, I stood there for a moment longer, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I looked healthier than I had in years, stronger, calmer. I had survived something that should have broken me. What I didn't know yet was that survival doesn't always prepare you for betrayal. Sometimes it just gives you the strength to finally see it. That night, as I locked my door and headed toward my parents' house, I felt a faint unease settle in my chest. It was subtle, easy to dismiss. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself family wouldn't hurt me again. I was wrong. The Morrison house looked exactly the way it always had on Sunday evenings. Warm lights glowing through the windows, the smell of roasted meat drifting into the driveway, the familiar hum of voices layered with polite laughter. It was the kind of scene that was supposed to make you feel safe, grounded, certain of where you belonged. I parked my car, smoothed my dress, and took a steady breath before stepping inside. The dining room table was already set with my mother's best china. Crystal glasses caught the light, deep red wine swirling inside them. My father sat at the head of the table, relaxed, cheerful. Isabella was beside him, radiant in a cream-colored blouse, her engagement ring catching everyone's eye. Daniel sat close to her, one hand resting protectively on the back of her chair. His parents, Thomas and Carol Ramirez, smiled warmly when they saw me. "Sylvia," Carol said, standing to hug me, "you look wonderful." "Healthy," Thomas added with a nod. "It's good to see you like this." "Thank you," I replied, feeling that familiar mix of gratitude and embarrassment. I had learned to accept compliments carefully. Too much emotion still felt like it might tip me over. My mother emerged from the kitchen with a silver tray. "Dinner's ready," she announced proudly. "I made roast beef. Sylvia always loved it, even when she was sick. She said it was the first thing she wanted when she got better." I felt everyone's eyes shift toward me. I smiled politely. "It's still my favorite." Thomas raised his glass. "Your recovery has been remarkable, Sylvia. Daniel talks about your strength all the time." I nodded, lowering my gaze. I was lucky. The conversation flowed easily at first. Work, weather, wedding planning details I only half followed. I told myself it was normal to feel slightly outside the circle. Isabella was the bride. This was her moment. Halfway through the meal, as my mother refilled glasses, I said casually, without thinking, "I can't believe the wedding is already next week." Time really flew. The room went quiet. Not the gentle pause of polite conversation, but the sharp, uncomfortable kind. Forks hovered midair. My father frowned slightly. Daniel stiffened beside Isabella. Isabella let out a small laugh. "What wedding?" she asked lightly. I blinked. "Your wedding, April 7th. She tilted her head, studying me like I'd said something odd. "Oh, that." My heart skipped. "That's the date on the invitation." Isabella shrugged, picking up her wine. "That was the old one. We changed it." "Changed it?" My voice sounded too loud in the sudden silence. "When?" "Last month," she said. "We wanted something smaller, more intimate." Daniel's parents exchanged a look. Carol reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "It was beautiful," she said gently. "Here, let me show you the pictures." I leaned closer as she scrolled. A garden ceremony. White chairs arranged under blooming trees. Isabella in a flowing dress, smiling brightly. Daniel beside her, emotional. Their parents, friends, extended family. Everyone, except me. I stared at the screen, my vision narrowing. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "Why didn't I know?" Isabella took a sip of wine. "You were sick, Sylvia. We didn't want to stress you." "But I was in remission," I said. "You knew that." She shrugged again, that same careless gesture I remembered from the hospital room. "Still, it would have turned into everyone worrying about you. I wanted the day to be about me." My mother's face tightened. "Isabella!" "It's not a big deal," my sister interrupted. "She knows I love her." I looked at Daniel. He looked stunned. "I thought you were invited," he said quietly. "I swear, Sylvia, I did." Carol's voice was careful. "Bella, why would you exclude your own sister?" Isabella rolled her eyes. "Oops," she said lightly. "Guess I sent her the wrong date. My mistake." The word oops echoed in my head. My chest felt hollow, like all the air had been sucked out of me. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin on the table. My hands were steady, even though everything inside me was shaking. "I see," I said. No one stopped me as I walked out. Behind me, I heard Isabella's irritated voice. "Why is she being so dramatic? It was my wedding. It had to be perfect." Thomas's chair scraped back sharply. "Perfect doesn't mean cruel," he said sternly. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the steering wheel as tears blurred my vision. Then I opened my banking app. The transfer was still pending. $5,000. The down payment. The quiet blessing I'd prepared, without ever expecting thanks. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Then I pressed cancel. The next morning, I opened my laptop and typed a brief email. "Joseph, please cancel the Brookline property arrangement for the Ramirez family. Family circumstances have changed. Offer it to other clients. I sent it, then picked up my phone. Helen, I said calmly when my contact answered, please mark Isabella and Daniel as unavailable for new property listings for the next 6 months. She paused. Is everything okay? Yes, I replied. It's personal. That afternoon, Daniel called. I'm so sorry, he said. I had no idea you weren't invited. I don't understand why she'd do that to you, especially after everything you've been through. I closed my eyes. Neither do I. There was a pause. We're seeing the Brookline property tomorrow. Isabella's excited. I exhaled slowly. Good luck. The next day, my phone rang again. This time, Isabella. Her voice was sharp. Why are all the houses suddenly unavailable, even Brookline? I answered calmly. I've decided not to be involved anymore. What? Her voice rose. Are you punishing me? No, I said evenly. I'm respecting your choice. You didn't need me at your wedding. I figured you don't need me now either. She was silent. So was I. For the first time, silence felt powerful. The silence didn't last. It never does. 2 days after Isabella's call, my mother showed up at my door without warning. I watched her through the window as she stood on the porch, smoothing her coat the way she always did when she was nervous. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home. Then I opened the door. Sylvia, she said softly, stepping inside, we need to talk. I nodded and led her into the living room. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Your sister didn't mean to hurt you, she began. She was under so much stress planning the wedding. I sat across from her, folding my hands calmly. She lied to me, Mom. That wasn't stress. She didn't want attention taken away from her, my mother admitted reluctantly. After everything you've been through, I met her eyes. I didn't ask for attention. I asked for honesty. My mother sighed. Is pulling your support really necessary? I didn't answer right away. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves. Life continued, indifferent. I didn't pull anything, I said finally. I just stopped giving. That night, Daniel called again. His voice sounded tired. We were denied the mortgage, he said quietly. The agent said our financial profile changed. It did, I replied. Isabella's panicking, he added. She doesn't understand what's happening. I think she does, I said softly. She just didn't think it would affect her. The next evening, we all sat together again, this time in Daniel's parents' living room. The mood was nothing like the dinner before. Thomas stood, his expression firm. Isabella, he said, your actions have consequences. Excluding Sylvia was unacceptable. Carol shook her head. She fought for her life, and you treated her like an inconvenience. Isabella's face drained of color. I didn't think... That's the problem, Daniel said, his voice breaking. You didn't think about my sister-in-law at all. She turned to me, eyes wide. What did you do? I took out my phone, not to threaten, but to explain. I had $5,000 set aside as a wedding gift. I secured a property opportunity. I coordinated financial options. All of it quietly. Her lips trembled. You canceled everything. Yes. You ruined our future, she cried. I shook my head. I tried to support it. You decided you didn't need me. The room was silent. Thomas spoke again. We are reconsidering our financial support. Carol nodded. Trust matters more than money. Isabella looked around, desperate. But we're married. Thomas's voice was steady. Marriage built on deception doesn't stand well. Daniel turned away, tears in his eyes. I love you, he said to Isabella, but I can't defend this. I stood. I'm not condemning you, Isabella. I'm accepting your choice. She whispered my name. I walked out. That night, I redirected the money to a cancer support foundation. The next chapter of my life had already begun. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments. Phone calls that went unanswered, messages typed and deleted, rumors passed quietly between relatives who suddenly remembered my name, now that the family was unraveling. A week after that meeting, my father called me late at night. Sylvia, he said, his voice tired in a way I'd never heard before. Can we talk? I agreed, even though part of me already knew what he was going to say. He didn't start with apologies. He never did. Isabella and Daniel are struggling, he said. They can't secure a loan. They've had to move into a short-term rental. I waited. She's been crying nonstop, he added. She says she didn't realize how much you were doing for them. I closed my eyes. Realizing something after it's gone doesn't change what it was. He sighed heavily. Your mother thinks you're being too harsh. I almost died, I said quietly, and she erased me from her happiest day. He didn't argue with that. A few days later, Daniel showed up at my door alone. He looked different, thinner, exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. The confidence I'd always associated with him had cracked. I didn't come to ask for money, he said immediately, or help. I stepped aside and let him in. I need to understand, he continued, sitting stiffly on the edge of the chair, why she did it, why she didn't tell me. Because she was afraid, I said simply. Of what? Of sharing attention, of sharing space, of being reminded that life isn't always fair. He rubbed his face with both hands. I didn't marry someone like that, he whispered. Or at least, I didn't think I did. I studied him carefully. People don't become someone else overnight, Daniel. They just stop hiding. He looked up at me then, eyes red. My parents are pulling their support. They said they can't build a future on values they don't respect. I nodded. They're right. The words hit him harder than I expected. That night, Isabella called again. This time she didn't yell. Her voice was small. I didn't think it would go this far. I leaned against the kitchen counter listening. That's because you thought family was unconditional. It is, she insisted weakly. No, I corrected. Love is. Access isn't. She was quiet for a long time. I was scared, she finally said. Every time someone mentioned you, the hospital, your recovery, I felt invisible. I let out a slow breath. You weren't invisible, Bella. You were just no longer the only one being looked at. Her voice broke. I just wanted one day to be about me. You could have had that, I said. You chose to take it by erasing me instead. Another silence. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. You don't, I replied gently. You live with it. The next news came from Daniel's parents. They were encouraging counseling. They were discussing separation. They were no longer willing to shield Isabella from the consequences of her decisions. When I heard the word divorce spoken aloud for the first time, I didn't feel triumph. I felt tired. A month later, I stood on a small stage at a cancer awareness fundraiser, my palms damp as I held the microphone. I wasn't there to talk about betrayal or family or weddings. I was there to talk about survival. I used to think surviving meant holding on to everything, I told the room. Every relationship, every expectation, every role I was given. Faces looked back at me. Patients, families, strangers. But I learned that surviving also means letting go of what no longer treats you with care. The applause that followed felt grounding, real. Later that night, as I checked my phone, I saw a message from Isabella. I'm so sorry. I would give anything to undo it. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Some things can't be undone, but they can be understood. She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to, because by then I had finally accepted something I should have learned years ago. Family doesn't get to hurt you just because they share your blood. And love doesn't mean standing still while someone walks over you. The divorce became official on a Tuesday morning. I found out the way I'd found out about the wedding, quietly, indirectly, through a mutual acquaintance who sounded unsure whether I already knew. I thought you'd heard, she said carefully. Daniel filed last week. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there for a long time with my phone resting face down on the table. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel victory. What I felt was a strange, steady calm, like a storm that had finally moved on after doing all the damage it was going to do. A few weeks later, my memoir was released. I hadn't planned to write it, at least not at first, but somewhere between the canceled transfers, the uncomfortable family silences, and the late nights where sleep wouldn't come, the words had started forming on their own. It wasn't a book about my sister. It was a book about surviving, about cancer, yes, but also about the quieter illness no one warns you about, the slow erosion of self-worth that happens when you keep shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. During the first interview, the host asked gently, "What was the hardest part of your journey?" I didn't say chemotherapy. I didn't say fear. The moment I realized, I answered, that surviving meant choosing myself, even when the people I loved didn't like that choice. The book did better than anyone expected. Letters started arriving. Messages from strangers who said they saw themselves in my silence, in my restraint, in my decision to finally stop explaining why pain hurts. One afternoon, as I was leaving a signing event, my phone buzzed. Isabella. Can we talk? Just coffee. I don't expect anything else. I stared at the message, then looked up at the sky. Clear, bright, wide. I typed back slowly. Coffee next Tuesday. That was all. When Tuesday came, I arrived early and chose a table by the window. Isabella walked in 10 minutes later. She looked thinner, older. The confidence she'd once worn so effortlessly was gone. She stopped when she saw me, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to sit. Hi, she said quietly. Hi, I replied. She didn't launch into excuses. She didn't cry. She just sat there, hands wrapped around her cup, staring at the surface of the coffee like it might offer answers. I lost more than a marriage, she said finally. I lost how people see me. I nodded. That tends to happen when actions catch up. She swallowed. I thought family would always cover for me. I met her eyes. I thought family would never erase me. We sat in silence for a moment. I'm sorry, she said at last. Not because of what happened to me, because of what I did to you. I believed her, but belief didn't mean restoration. I forgive you, I said carefully, but forgiveness isn't a reset button. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. Do you think we'll ever be close again? I considered the question honestly. I don't know, I said, but if we are, it'll be something new, not what it used to be. She accepted that. So did I. That evening, back at home, I opened my banking app, not to cancel anything this time, but to confirm a recurring donation to the Cancer Foundation I now worked closely with. The money that had once been meant to secure someone else's future was now helping people fight for their lives. It felt right. As I stood by the window, watching the sun dip below the trees, I thought about everything I'd learned in this second life. That silence can be strength. That love without respect is just obligation. That survival isn't about clinging, it's about choosing. I whispered it to myself, not as a promise, but as a truth I'd earned. I'm allowed to move forward. And this time I did.